Hey, everybody. What if we could actually change the way we did business, bring more humanity and connection to it, into our leadership, to the companies that we run? What's possible with that? Why is that even important? Does it make our life any better? Hey, everybody. My name is Bill Gallagher. I'm the scaling coach and host of the Scaling Up podcast. Our show comes to you every week with a CEO like today, an author like today, somebody who can help you think about and find ways to grow and scale your company with less effort, faster, easier, and have more fun in the process. So you'll find more than 550 shows now at scalingcoach.com, along with a couple special things. We do a workshop every month to get you started in scaling up, help you shift your mindset and see how to use the tools of scaling up in a range of companies. We also have a free mini course where you can assess where you are in the stages of scaling your company and what's the critical moves to do to move to the next stage of scaling and growing your business to whatever it is that you want to accomplish. That's for free at scalingcoach.com. So find all those shows and more and our monthly workshops at scalingcoach.com. I'm joined now by Cathy Thorpe, CEO and author. She's the CEO of a company that we talk about a lot, Nurse Next Door, that has applied successfully the scaling up ideas and that kind of thing in different ways to their companies over time, learning from Vern way back when, the founder of the company, Ken Sim. And then Cathy is the CEO of that company today and is one of the top influential businesswomen last year and has expanded this company to over 400 franchise locations around the world. She's got a book out this year, Bold Kindness, which is all about being a caring, more compassionate way to lead. So welcome to the show, Cathy.
Thank you, Bill. It's great to be here.
Thanks for having us here. So what, I don't know, maybe tell kind of your story. What is it that led you to write this book, or maybe something about your background and your career that we should know?
Yeah, so I started my career back in retail many, many years ago. And I was actually with the Gap for 15 years. And it was one of those, it's been that journey of, having great bosses and having not great bosses. And, I think back to
retail is really notorious for both, right?
Very. And so, I remember Steven Sullivan. He was my boss and I loved him. He was just an awesome relationship leader. And, he actually, I was 29 years old and he actually believed in me enough and let me run the German organization out in Germany for 3 years. And I remember one time he came out for a visit and we were driving down the Autobahn. And, obviously a Canadian driving down the Autobahn is scary enough as it is. And then you've got Steven beside you and he, Cher was on the radio. And so he turns up the music and he was so excited and he starts singing and I'm singing. And I just remember that moment because it was like, wow, he got to know people. He cared deeply. And then Steven left. And so I got a new boss. And that new boss became fixated on, dashboards and results and, you're only as good as the number you had yesterday. And it really left me feeling disengaged. And it disengaged me to the extent that I left the organization after 15 years, a place that I loved and learned so much, but really became, it was just that experience of having a bad boss. And for me, that was really the start of my journey with leadership and just the impact that is made, that we make as leaders in an organization on others. And so, fast forward and I start with Nurse Next Door. It's been 10 years. I can't believe it. But, walking into that leadership role and it's like, what culture do you want to create? And so I've always loved leading and developing others. Yeah. But now was really that opportunity to say, okay, what kind of culture do I want to have here at Nurse Next Door? And what do I want to have people feel when they come to work every day?
That's a really useful thing to think about. Like what does it feel like to come there, right? And that is, there is a feeling around a particular culture and whatever kind of culture, regional, ethnic, religious, like we all have cultures, corporate cultures that we fit into. And you talk about being in one and suddenly feeling alienated by too much of focus on the facts and figures and not enough focus on the humanity of the environment.
Yeah, he didn't know me. He didn't know who I was as a person. He didn't know what, got me excited. He didn't know what was going on in my life. And I just, I want people to be able to show up and be exactly who they are and bring their whole selves to work and create that environment where people can thrive.
Well, with a background in retail, how did you make the shift from the retail to Nurse Next Door? Was that the direct, or was there something in between?
I was in another retail. It was retail, and then I went into business consulting for a while for private companies, and then I got this opportunity. For me, it's retail, franchising. You are leading others. You're leading people. You're working with people. I love working with people, and that connects. It's really the connection everywhere. It's business. And, I would say the operations that you learn in, at a place like the Gap and in retail, and being able to apply that to a franchise system and really create that, the strong operations that you need to really be able to continuously improve the system.
Tell us about Nurse Next Door. What does that company look like? What does it do? How does it different than anybody else?
Yeah, so we're a home care company. When I started, we had 40 locations. We now have over 400. We're across Canada, the US, Australia, and we just started in England, and we will continue to open up in other countries. What differentiates us is we call it happier aging. And it's really about, what did that client used to love doing that they don't get to do anymore? And so we bring that to them. And, it might be as simple as going for a walk because they love being out in nature. So we go for a walk with them. It could be someone who wants to go on a trip somewhere, and we will, do that with them. It really is bringing those moments of happiness and joy back into someone's life. It's aging can get lonely, and how do we help support the mental aspects of helping support someone in the home?
Yeah, I totally get that. My mother and mother-in-law are both alone and aging in their 80s now. And more than anything else, they like to visit. And I have a sibling who focuses a lot on the logistics of my mom's care. When I show up, I mostly just take her to dinner and sit, hold her hand and talk to her.
She would love that, I bet. Yeah.
Right. Like, that's what do we do? Well, there's a couple restaurants that we go to regularly, and she doesn't eat that much anymore. But like, it's just that time to connect, and food creates a way to like do that.
It sure does. She probably just loves those moments.
Yeah. And it's interesting, though, that like establishing a connection to a human being and knowing someone, like there's regular caregivers for both of them that they have a human connection with. And then there are other people who are just, doling out their meds or, taking their vitals or things like that.
Exactly. People just worrying about the physical piece of it. And it's really, yes, it's important, but that mental component is even bigger.
Yeah, it's funny as the kid, right? Well, I'm not so much a kid anymore at 60.
But still a kid.
But the caregivers come in the room, and then my mom starts telling them about our lives and stuff and how I was as a little boy. And I it's like uncomfortable and kind of cringy. I'm like, Mom, they don't want to know that. But who knows if they want to know that or not? It's my mom who wants to tell it, right? Like she wants to connect and relive those experiences in that moment.
Yeah, and great caregivers do want to hear those stories, right? Because they have such big hearts, and that's why they're doing what they're doing. And so they love that level of relationship with people.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you're just focused on like getting something, I want you to produce a bigger result for me, or I want you to fix a problem, or I want you to fund me or buy from me or like whatever. When it's all like transactional and we're working on stuff, we get frustrated and there's give and take. And then you stop and you're like, you hear that, they've got a child who's in a stressful time or something like that, or they have something new that they're passionate about, like personally a hobby or something like that, or they got a new pet, or their pet is sick. Like when you get that little bit of something, it's like, oh, this changes everything. I don't know
It
why.
changes everything, right?
I
Yeah.
still want what I want, right? But
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but I have a different, deeper connection with that human being, and I can see how what I want relates with what they want, what they're dealing with.
Yeah. It is the human connection.
You in our getting ready for the show, you shared some stories and that kind of thing with us. I'd love for you to tell us about the Australian master franchisee, whatever that business was, and where this bold kindness idea is.
Yeah. So, bold kindness, it's really about creating that space to give people the autonomy to really do a great job. And so the story with Australia is someone I work with, his name is Arif. He's been with the organization for 18 years, and he is responsible for global franchise development. And I remember being I was actually at Singularity University out in California. And I remember sitting outside and I remember Arif calling me, and he said, I don't think we're going to be able to close this Australia master franchise deal. And I said, well, Arif, you always figure things out. So go and do what it takes. And so I didn't hear from him for a couple of weeks. And, he walks into my office 2 weeks later and he's like, okay, we're going to close the deal. And I'm like, awesome. That's amazing. And then, fast forward a few months and we were waiting to get on the plane. We were at the airport and he looks at me. He's like, we should probably figure out, who's going to go down for the conference in Australia. And I said, oh, okay. So is it because it's the first one and they want someone there? And he's like, no, it's in perpetuity. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, they want someone there every year. And I said, oh, I didn't know that we did that. And he said, you know what? You told me to do whatever it took. And so I was laughing. I got on the plane and I was just like, exactly. And I love that because he knew that I had to trust in him to be able to go and make those decisions. And he did. And I loved that he didn't feel like he had to come and tell me or ask me. He did it and he closed the deal. And it's been such a huge success. And I just think if he didn't take those chances, it wouldn't have happened. So I go back to bold kindness. So it's about, let me step back even further. We always talk about we only have self-led people here at Nurse Next Door. And what I mean by that is, I got rid of the notion of the word manager because I believe that managers are managing poor performance. And it's, what, when you're a self-led adult, you show up, you know when to be at work, you show up on time, you know what your job is. You don't need to have someone tell you what to do. You are going to lead yourself. And so we only have self-led people here at Nurse Next Door. And so then you have self-led people that want to be developed and they want to grow and do more with their careers and in their life. And so we have those bold conversations. We have bold, direct conversations that give people that opportunity to get feedback, to learn and grow and do better in life. And then kindness. What is kindness? Kindness is about being in a relationship with someone. You want to know that person. You get to know that person. You want to know what their dreams and their goals are. And when you have that level of relationship with someone, they are able to hear and take feedback in a completely different way than if you didn't have that relationship. So that's really the essence of bold kindness and really, that's the culture here at Nurse Next Door.
So just to think about your use of the words, if I'm kind to a stranger, is that different than what you mean? Or are you saying that I am creating a relationship with that person?
It's about creating a relationship and knowing who that person is and how, when you know who someone is, you know how they will take feedback. You know the way to approach and give them feedback. And, I just think it's having that care about someone else's heart And
Yeah.
when you do that, you can really create, well, you can give someone that opportunity to really grow and develop.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we prepared the show, you also talked about a boss who mentored you and what you got out of that. Tell us about that. Who was the boss? What happened there? What was that like?
Well, I go back to my boss, Steven, back at
Oh,
in the Gap. And,
uh-huh.
that was really what I remember about that relationship is that he saw more in me than I saw in myself. He
That's a
saw
great principle of a good boss, leader, coach.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah,
he helped me get there by giving me
yeah.
experiences that allowed me to grow and develop. He wasn't
Hmm.
telling me what I was going to do. He was giving me
Hmm.
those opportunities in my career, and that's one of the things that I'm very proud of here at Nurse Next Door. We have so many people who have been internally promoted that start in our care services center, and then look at various roles that come up in our heart quarters, and yeah, we've had so many people grow and develop here at Nurse Next Door because they love the culture and they want to do more, and we give them new experiences to be able to grow and develop.
Hmm. It's interesting the contrast to that. You mentioned retail, and I have a lot of background working with some different retailers. And for many, many years, we worked with Nordstrom. And Nordstrom was always a great one because they were sort of more kind and human, and we liked sort of that level of price and place that they were. And so we did business with Nordstrom. We did business with many other retailers, large and small, but we courted for a long time Macy's and Bloomingdale's and Federer. So we finally got a deal with them, and it was going to be worth millions and millions, and we were really excited about it. And then as we started the process, it was just painful. It was so painful. And I, at some point before we were actually like shipping orders, and we were just in like the logistics of the distribution relationship, the handshaking, the EDI, and all that. I was like, we weren't getting anywhere. So I called our buyer and I like, can you help with this? This is like really painful and obnoxious. Can you unstick this for us? And they were harsh to me, and I like heard it and I'm like, that wasn't the answer I was expecting. I'm not, and so I said, maybe we shouldn't do business together. And then the buyer really came unglued on me and like, "Rah, rah, 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 rah." And I'm like, well, if this is what it's like in the courtship and the like, I can't imagine it's going to get any better. And this just isn't the kind of relationship we want to have. And so maybe we should just didn't do this. And she just unloaded on me, and I'm like, okay. And I hung up, and it was definitely unsettling kind of a conversation. But as time went on, even later that day, I'm like, I dodged a bullet there. I'm really glad I didn't go down that road. That's a company that's, and retailer suppliers so adversarial in most cases, right? Not every case, but many. And I think also like online, the same contrast, like dealing with Amazon versus dealing with QVC, profoundly different relationships.
Mhm.
Amazon was like, go to hell. QVC was like, let's work it out,
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And you want to do business with good people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And people who like,
Right.
and look, there's many people obviously who love the Amazon way. And as a customer, I like using Amazon.
Mhm.
I just didn't like being a business partner to them. It's fascinating though, where the cultures bump up and the places where there's humanity and not humanity in the mix of it.
Yeah. And I think that, when you look at the world, especially coming out of COVID, people are asking for a new way of leadership, right? Like people are wanting the humanity. People
Yes.
want to be going into a workplace that is, cares about them,
Yeah.
that where they can feel engaged, that they're part of the success of the organization, that they're able to have the space to make decisions, not be told what to do. I think that this is moving at such a massive pace because people are choosing. It's like if I'm going to not have that, I'm going to do something on my own. And so, businesses are really sitting there trying to figure things out. And I think that it's this conversation that's so important.
Yeah. You shared that you lost your husband not too long ago. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So he was diagnosed with colon cancer. He passed away 3 years ago. And so it was 5 years ago that he was diagnosed. And, it was obviously a massive blow to, my kids and I. And,
Yeah.
it was that moment of, okay, so I'm the CEO here at Nurse Next Door, and how am I going to show up and go through this experience? And, am I going to do this on my own? Am I going to, put on that brave face when I go to work and not show up as to how I was actually feeling? And I decided to lean into it. It's one of those moments of, okay, if I want to have this culture of allowing people to bring their full self to work, I better show up and bring my full self. And, it was that level of vulnerability that I truly showed during that time. And, I can't tell you how much that impacted my life. And, obviously it was a very hard thing to go through, but just the level of relationships that I developed with everyone here in this organization, because I was real. I was coming to work. I was sharing everything. I was going through all of the emotions. And everyone else started to do the same thing. They were sharing what was going on in their life. And, we just got to know each other at a completely different level. And that impacted me deeply in terms of how I want to show up as a leader, how I want to show up as a person each and every single day, because you see that people are looking for that. They want to be able to bring their whole self to work. And I think, I need to start that. And I started that. And it's made a profound impact on me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. It's, horrible that we ever have situations like that, but we all have things that happen. You maybe don't lose a spouse, but you have crises in your family, in your world, in your community. We all navigate crises in some way, and how you deal with them, it really matters as a leader, and also how you relate what you allow for among the people around you, right?
Yeah.
Such a example.
Right? Yeah. And I think here's an example also. So my whole thing too is when people bring their full self to work, you hear what their dreams and goals are. And we had some people who are single after COVID. They decided they wanted to get a dog. And so my whole thing was, you know what? That's like having a baby. So what does that look that it's that important to them, right? It is. So it was like, okay, we're gonna let you do whatever it takes to, whatever, like if you need to work from home, if you need to have this work-life balance for the first 6 months as you get that puppy up and going, then do that. And I bring that up, and I bring that story up only because people are sharing those things. They're getting excited about those things. They know this organization is going to support them. And it's because we're all showing up as human beings and bringing our full self to work.
Mm-hmm. I had a CEO I was coaching some years ago who really stands out around this, and he was like, "We've tried so many different things, and we have the daily huddles, and we have the dashboards, and we create spiffs and games, and nothing seems to really sustainably move the needle. And I just don't know how to motivate my people." I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And like we have people like our purpose, and they like everything seems fine on the surface, but like we have all the parts, and what am I missing? And I said, well, what do they care about? Just curious. And it's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, what's going on with them personally? I don't really know. And he told me a couple sort of very surfacey facts. And I'm like, yeah, but right now. And I said, okay, well, I have some time before our meeting, so why don't I go and talk to some people before we meet, and then we'll reconvene. And we were going to start in the afternoon and then do the next day. And so I went around his office and I just had some quick conversation. Hey, how you doing? And what's going on? And, like that. And then I checked in with him and we shared a sandwich before the meeting. And I'm like, okay, who is it that is ready to start a family? I don't know. Who is really thinking about buying a house? Who's never taken a trip out of the country? Who wants to go back to college, get a advanced degree? I don't know. Like, that's what they care about. That's the thing that you have got to tie their job performance to that in some way. Like, and it has to be a way, but really more, they have to tie it together, right? You have to be the vehicle for that they can see why delivering more productivity to you is going to help them get what they want in life. And he's like, okay.
Very, very interesting.
And it wasn't easy. And it's not always easy because you're focused on running the business. You're not thinking about people as human beings a lot of the time. You're thinking about, people as sales producers or operations people or whatever.
It's interesting, Bill. Like, I find myself, I truly believe all I work on is the relationships that I have with everyone in this organization. Because what has fascinated me is the more I work on the relationships, I don't need to lead them. They lead themselves, right? They are so excited to come to work. They are so excited to do a great job. They're so excited to not be told what to do. And I just, listen, it starts with hiring great people. So I always say I unapologetically only work with great people, period.
Yeah.
And when you have that, you just build relationships with them. They're going to do all the rest. I don't, we figure out what the budget is at the beginning of the year. And you know what? They're going to make it happen, because if it's not happening, they're going to figure out what they can do differently. If it is happening, they're going to do more of it. And you can just get out of their way because you're in a relationship with them. They know you care. And then, you know what? They're going to go and drive the results. And it fascinates me how the more you do that, the more space that people have and the more excited they get.
I think you say something that seems really obvious on the surface there. Hire great people. Start with great. A lot of people say that, right? Seems obvious. It's like, of course, why would you hire the shitty people?
Right.
Except I think it's situational, right? Somebody who's great for you in your environment is not great somewhere else. And somebody who's great somewhere else might not be great for you. I don't 100%. Think of that as like absolute or objective, right? It's relative.
It situational. Is. You have to be really clear on what your culture is.
Yeah.
And then hire to like it. You need to hire to that. You need to fit that culture, right? Like that. Those are the people you hire. Because you're right. Yeah. Like, listen, self-led here might not be what someone else wants. I get it. But when you hire to the culture and you're just that's where you spend the time to make sure that the fit is there, then you get some incredible people that do incredible things.
It's fascinating and interesting, the differences in cultures. And when you're outside of a company, like looking at many companies, it seems easier, more obvious. When you're actually in it, it's a lot harder to see. I like, though, in particular, how you chose to share a personal crisis that you were navigating and like be open about it. And I think a lot of times the leaders they're like, you don't want to know about my whatever. And in truth, like there's some amount, like how much and time and energy you spend. If all you did all day was talk about the family thing, be like, okay, but what about me and my job and that kind of thing? I might wonder. There's some balance there, I think.
There's always a balance. And, yes, and you spend time developing those people too. So, you're in a relationship with them, but you're also giving them the feedback to help them grow and develop. I would add on to this story too. Harry did pass away. And, so everyone saw me go through this for 2 years. And then all of a sudden everyone was looking at me after, because it's like, okay, what's going to happen with Cathy's life? What's she going to
Yeah.
do?
How are you? What's going
And
on?
it
Yeah.
was, so I became it was like, I'm like, okay, well, am I just going to see the past as the best part of my life, or am I going to create a
Right.
future that's exciting? And so I stepped into this whole version 2.0, and I've tried things that I started playing tennis, I started playing golf, I met new people and stepped into a new life. I started dating. It was like dating in your 50s. And so, that was another part of it. People were watching me take
Yeah.
something that was really tough and hard and actually create a new version of my life. And
Yeah.
I think that that's also been part of leadership, right? Where you
Yeah.
show up
Yeah.
as a human being who's creating something new out of something that was really hard. And I bring that up as an example because I think that, people watch and they learn. They learn what I know that I taught people going through that. And it's
Yeah.
not something that we necessarily talk about, but I see people taking chances here, and doing things that I don't know if they would have had the confidence to do before. But I think that we all are helping each other just be better humans.
It's interesting. I'm reminded when you said that of another CEO that I coached in the middle of the COVID pandemic, when everybody was working remotely and working from home and that kind of thing. He'd carved out a part of his home for his home office, and he was doing his video meetings, that kind of thing, like everybody was. I have this new studio now, where we do all kinds of things like that, and it definitely evolved. But in his case, the biggest problem for him was the fact that his kids could run in, he could hear them, and he wasn't separated from the young kids. And he's like, I'm just exhausted and stressed out and interrupted and distracted. And I find this whole working this way is just really a problem. And I just want to go back to the office. And he and a few people who had private offices soon did. But he was like, what do I do about this with the company? And I'm like, why don't you be honest about it? Because many people have even less resource than you do. And I shared with him about a woman that I was coaching on one of our teams, and she was living in a studio apartment in San Francisco with her husband, and she was working from a closet. Not even a very walk-in closet, right? Like, I'm like, where are you? And she's like, oh, I'm in a closet because we have a studio apartment in San Francisco and we're going to move. But, for months and months there she was. And I talked to another woman in New York, and she's like, I live alone in an apartment in New York and I'm trying to keep my company together, right? Like, just the lonely, like, whatever it is. I'm like, be honest with people. Tell them what you're going through and let them share with you about what they're dealing, because you're all dealing with like a disruption. You're all dealing with dislocation and not your routine and comfort like that. And he did, and it had tremendous result for them. Now, some people left the company as they navigated working away and working together again. And, but the openness opened up a conversation about it so they could evolve their work approaches collectively. Right.
Yeah. I love that came out of COVID. It's, we can be real. You can see into someone's room, right? You can see into I love, let the kids run into the room. Let the kid, let's be in the real life situations that we all have. And I don't know, there's this sense of, you just feel a deeper connection with someone when that is allowed to happen.
There's in our, you probably do daily huddles and meetings and things like that. And many of our teams open with a one-word open or a one-word close. And I don't think a lot of people realize the one-word open is actually a pretty useful mindfulness practice to transition into a meeting, because you go from, maybe you had a great morning, maybe you had a really awful morning, and then you're like suddenly in a meeting, but in the background of your head is still all the feeling intenseness of the traffic and the family and whatever went nuts this in the morning, and you're carrying all that, and then people are trying to interact with you and work, and you're like still there. But when you could say honestly in your one word open, I'm stressed, or I'm tired, or I'm annoyed this morning, when you can be really honest about it, like you can actually transition, you can move into that meeting by acknowledging it. It sort of sets it aside, it brackets it, if you will. That and lets people, yeah. I don't think a lot of people realize that that is kind of a transitional mindfulness practice. Just one word, that can boom move you into
great example,
the topic of the thing. So, talk to us about bold kindness. What does it mean and look like, and what are your lessons for CEOs in the book?
Well, I talked about being self-led, having those bold conversations, in a relationship with someone. And so therefore you can have a conversation where you show kindness and care about someone, with someone. I would also add, we talk a lot here at Nurse Next Door about mentorship. And what I mean with that is, leadership it still suggests top down, right? Like there's still this notion of hierarchy in an organization. And I think when you talk about mentorship, it's about human beings coming together. And I get to share my experiences. So I will talk with people about, if they're having an issue with something, I will give them my thoughts of what I've experienced in my career to help them, navigate that situation that they're working through. And I think it's about sitting beside someone and being a human being and sharing just thoughts and ideas. And, that means we all share our thoughts and ideas, and we all have different skill sets. And if we're just helping each other through those mentorship conversations, that's a big part of this culture also. And I think it's something that, I think also like we're moving that, like the word manager, we don't use anymore. I think leadership is still there, but I think mentorship is happening more and more. And I think we're going to see even more of that in the future.
You mentioned something really interesting in there. You said come alongside someone. And I think a lot of times we sit opposite, right? I look at the camera, you're there. I sit on one side of the desk, you sit on the other. We talk about things, and it creates a kind of an adversarial transactional. But if you physically move, or you conceptually move alongside someone, looking together with them at the same thing, there's a change in the way that you're interacting with them that is real. And you could practice it just by doing that. Like, move over, say, oh, let me look at that with you, and come sit next to them and see how it shifts. And then you can, as you develop a skill in it, just do it like mentally, without necessarily needing to change your physical position.
Yeah, well, so I have a desk in my office, and I haven't sat at it in 8 years. I have a pink couch, and I sit on the pink couch, and that's my invitation. The door is always open, and it's my invitation to always have people come and sit beside me and be in a conversation, about what's happening with work, be in a conversation about what's happening in their life.
Love that. I still sit at a desk. I have a desk, but for like more than 20 years ago, I put a couch in my office because I saw somebody else have a couch in a sitting area they talked to years ago. And I'm like, as soon as I could get an office big enough, I'm going to have a couch always in my office and a place. And then I realized, I kind of like sitting there too. But so I'll have a desk for certain things, but a lot of the time to talk to people, or even sometimes to work, I'll sit on the couch or the chair next to it. And it changes things, right?
Yeah, it does. And it's pretty amazing how people will open up when you're sitting on a couch with them, and just the level of vulnerability that people will show. It's pretty incrable.
Now, I suppose if you sat in the chair next to it and then asked them to lay down on the couch, it'd be a whole other relationship.
Yeah.
How long have you been feeling this way?
Yeah, right?
Tell me about your mother. Awesome. So lead by example, come alongside people, mentor them, get to know them as human beings. I think that, like, in some cultures, certainly in the United States, we're sort of afraid of probing into personal things. We're afraid of being inappropriate, of doing it. But I think if you're not like interrogating them, what's going on and how's everything at home? That's different than tell me about your relationship.
Well, yeah, and I think it starts with me, right? Like if
Yeah.
I'm sharing my life and I'm opening myself up,
Yeah.
other people do it, right? That it
Yeah.
just it naturally happens. So it starts with ourselves.
Yeah. Well, so the book is Bold Kindness. The website is Bold Kindness. We'll throw the link on the screen and in the show notes as well. Boldkindness.com is where to go to read more and follow up and like that kind of thing. I've so enjoyed having this conversation. I think it's such an important topic to bring some of that vibe to your leadership style and to your organization. Can make a massive difference. Thanks for coming, talking with us about it today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Thanks to my friend and mentor, Vern Harnish, who created the whole Scaling Up network and framework that we use for all of our clients, and to the team at Storion, who gets our show ready and out the door every week, and before and after, like all that. So Storion.co is those guys. Thanks again, everyone, for watching, for listening. Until we talk to you next time, keep scaling.